So we've come to the last of the four foundations. This is mindfulness of Dhamma. It's a somewhat difficult concept to translate. It's very multi-faceted, this Dhamma, or Dharma as it's called in Sanskrit. And it's also very central actually to understanding Buddhism. So in this frame we'll start unpacking the various meanings of the term, especially as it relates to the practice of mindfulness. And then in future frames we'll kind of dig a little bit deeper into each of the categories that are laid out in the discourse. And these are the hindrances, the aggregates, the senses, the factors of awakening, and the Four Noble Truths. So one meaning of the term Dharma is truth with a capital T. It's a truth that goes deeper than any fact or propositional knowing. It refers to a fundamental pattern, you could say, that underlies everything. It's a universal law. So it's a truth in that sense. And the term is also used to refer to the teachings of the Buddha specifically, that he was teaching the Dharma, he was teaching this natural principle. Or perhaps more specifically, he was teaching a method for realizing the truth for ourselves, experientially, a direct knowing of this Dharma. So in a sense, it has nothing to do with any particular teaching or religion or belief system. That, for example, Taoists have their equivalent in the Tao, this natural principle. And so in fact, anyone who is genuinely teaching or transmitting this truth is transmitting the Dharma. The term is also used in a more personal sense, and from this perspective, we all have our own Dharma that is unique to our life, our incarnation. And from this perspective, you could say that anyone who lives their Dharma is living life according to or in harmony with the truth, with the Tao, with these natural principles. So far we've seen how the Dharma can refer to both the path and the teaching, as well as the goal, or that to which the teachings are pointing. And we sometimes hear phrases like, the path is the goal. And this, I think, is potentially a cause of confusion, which is why I believe we see in further expressions of Buddhism, in other schools of Buddhism, a different emphasis emerging. And we see this in Zen, for example, through sayings like, don't confuse the finger pointing to the moon with the moon itself. Or if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. Right? So these are the more Zen-like style of not confusing the teaching with the actual goal of the teaching. Right? Now, don't confuse the map with the territory. Also in Taoism, famously it said that the Tao that can be spoken is not the true Tao, or the way that can be pointed out is not the true path. So these are all warnings not to confuse, not to take the teaching or the technique too seriously, essentially. So any transmission or teaching of the Dharma is useful only to the degree that it helps us awaken, that it helps us personally embody and know this truth for ourselves. All right? So with this insight in mind, the Buddha also likened his teaching to a raft designed to help bring people across a river. That once we've crossed the river to that further shore of awakening and liberation, we don't pick up the raft and carry it on our back. It's a means of transportation, right? So with this in mind, let's now return to the discourse on mindfulness. So in the context of mindfulness, Dhamma refers more specifically to something that we could translate as universal contents of awareness. Universal contents of awareness, or perhaps categories of phenomena. So what does this mean? So we could take the example of the hindrance of hatred, that we all know what it feels like to experience hatred. It doesn't matter if we are a man or a woman, if we're a certain age. It doesn't matter if we're born in this country or that country, this period of time or that period of time. That hatred is universal, that it's the same hatred. It may have different triggers and different stories attached to it that seems very personal, but the experience itself is something that we can all kind of relate to. It's a universal object of our awareness in that sense. And it has the same effects on all of us. It affects our consciousness in the same way. It leads us to suffering when we are caught in hatred, for example. So in the same way, these categories of phenomena that we're talking about, these dhammas, they don't really depend on having a certain belief system or identifying as a Buddhist, for example. And this is what it means, that it's a universal pattern, a universal category of phenomena. So they are, in a sense, they're part of our psychic makeup, or they're part of the human experience. And this is what makes the teaching so powerful. So the 5 categories are the 5 hindrances. These are mental factors that kind of get in the way of realizing our inner essence. We have the aggregates of clinging, and this is the analysis of the kind of the building blocks and the dynamic that make up our false sense of identity, which is at the core of our suffering. We have the 6 senses. This is our entire sensory experience, including mental experience like thoughts. And then we have the factors of awakening. These are qualities of mind that lead to or accompany liberation of the mind. So we could see them as kind of markers on the path. And then finally we have the 4 noble truths. And this is the Buddha's framing on the entire predicament of how we get caught in suffering, and also the way out. So this brings us back to the original statement that Dhamma is a multifaceted concept that is central to Buddhism. And in a sense, this 4th foundation actually includes the entire teaching of the Buddha, because it includes the 4 noble truths, which includes the Noble Eightfold Path, which includes mindfulness itself. So it's in a sense it's all-encompassing in that sense. But as we see over and over in the teaching of mindfulness, the point is not intellectual understanding. The theory is there only to support our practice and our understanding. And through this 4th foundation, we're invited to bring mindful contemplation to each of these categories to realize the underlying truth in all of them. So it's a bit like looking at a diamond through its different facets. We're looking at the mind through the facets of these dhammas, these categories of phenomena, in order to realize the mind that is unobstructed, the mind that is already free. So to summarize, we could look at this 4th foundation of mindfulness as transmuting the Dharma from kind of intellectual understanding into a direct experience of the liberated mind that is free from suffering. So in the future frames, we'll kind of dig into each of the categories to start exploring each of these pattern or categories of phenomena, starting with the 5 hindrances. Thanks for watching.